mention one, the Hexton area. When we talk about our rural councillors representing remote and being remote and struggling for access and all of that kind of thing, well, a large population of that rural ward is that Hexton area that aren't struggling for access or and aren't remote. We talked about concerns around skill set that we're going to need during reform, and I couldn't agree more. But skill set around this table is essential, and hopefully voters identify people with those skill sets in the challenges we have. Unfortunately, you don't get that by having rural and urban, nor do you get it, nor do you get someone with pest management or biodiversity corridor experience, because you could get someone from a township who has no idea about any of that. That's assuming you get a farmer, or it's not assuming, it's saying that we want this type of person because of their skills. And again, happy to have those skills at the table, but they need to be elected, and they're not predetermined by putting an arbitrary boundary and saying we'll get someone from there and they'll do it. So for me, the only way forward is option A, and yeah, happy to have moved that.
Thank you.
Option one. Oh, option one. Sorry.
Did I have someone? No.
Just
Wait a second, Meredith. Oh, yes. Councillor Akuata Brown.
There's one thing I think when I look at this whole process too, that it plays out, what is our role? We swear an oath that we will, to the best of our ability, serve the whole region, that we will make the best decisions for everybody who lives here in Tainawhiti. And around this table, most of us have other work, because this isn't our full-time job. And the changes that we're looking at doing, because I take seriously that I'm a district councillor. I travel up to Te Aroha quite frequently to, I get asked to judge the Christmas parade from time to time with Mr. Burdett over there, and I get asked to attend other things out at other parts of region, and I do it because I'm a district councillor. And I really appreciate it when I'm asked to traverse into parts of region I don't get to go to much. I love it. I love the opportunity to go out west and into the Taruhiri ward and all of that. And I want to say thank you to our rural councillors for your knowledge, your expertise, your lived experience, and absolutely appreciate you at this table. I've gained much insights into the whole rural world through your talks. But let me just reinforce again that I saw the whole opportunity of having Māori wards as being extra knowledge around that, because of lived experience from generations ago. And again, rurally, Māori lived on the land. that's the whole framework of whenua and the importance of it, if you like. So I see the benefits there, of course. It's about having the better knowledge at this table. I didn't stand in the election at any frame, time, or space as a iwi representative, because I'd found out at 38 years of age I was from Tainui. So made things a little bit awkward, but I have got connections here, don't panic. My husband's Ngāti Porou. So for me, I look at my role as a councillor in the space of being a district councillor and the importance of knowing all things, coming to the table with a set of expertise while I was elected. But for me, number one, and as our councillor Wharehinga said, we are trying to be fair and equitable in a space that has still tensions around the use of the noted Māori ward. We saw that happen through the submission process. So we want to allay those fears by saying we are doing the best for our region with regard to the population who live here, the interested people who live here, those who have the knowledge around this space. So I want to support option one, even though there's parts of me going, but I think we are trying to bring our community with us, because we know we've had to fight in certain corridors to get them to understand what this is about. It's part of our government's legislation, it's part of our roles, statute as a council, to be good treaty partners, to represent the region best And doing this is what this is all about. So for me today, I want to make sure I'm making a fair and right decision, even though I know there'll be those who still sense it's not. So I want to, I want us to know that we are working out how to do this right, this righteous decision. So I support option 1 and thank the staff for all their mahi and everybody that's worked in this space, because times are changing and we've got to be relevant to the now and the changing landscape of the future. We want more young people, as Isaac said, to get involved in politics and this local government and all government. So this is the way forward. And so again, thank you for all your mahi.
Thank you. So I'm happy to move option 2 if option 1 fails, seconded by Councillor Burdett, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Burdett. Okay. Can you please do that, James? So just some, Meredith, just quickly listen, there's some technicalities when we move, there's a special word that needs to go in.
So I understand we're getting close to the voting stuff, starting with option 1, just, and if that fails, I'll have to talk to option 2, otherwise I won't be wasting. Sorry, I won't. Sorry, I don't want to waste anyone's time, so I'll just speak to this on the matter of option 1, just some naming convention stuff in terms of the ward names. We've had some advice of the legal nature around those names, and so I would be suggesting if the mover and seconder, etc., through the council process are happy with it, that it would be Taira Whiti, Māori ward, Taira Whiti, general ward, no brackets.
All good, everyone happy with that? Just basic naming, which is part of the technicalities that need to be in there.
Yes, and just as a matter of interest, that forms part of the initial proposal consultation, the naming of wards regardless. So, but just there's the slight technicality and the background that we've come to learn through this arduous journey. Thank you.
Councillor Faulkner.
Can I call for a division, Madam Chair, when you put it?
Yes, Councillor Faulkner, thank you.
Sorry, just raised an issue that I've often wondered about with the, if that's the naming of the 2 wards, does that mean our council then has to be renamed?
No.
Okay. Okay, last comments of clarification or statements you want to make. Don't introduce new stuff now. We have 2 stuff on the table, 2 stuff, not stuff, recommendations. So please don't just chat, make sure what you say is relevant. Isaac.
Just 2 questions regarding 2, since you moved that.
Yep.
First one, on page 16, number 42. Are we going to have issues with the Māori wards being split, seeing as the city Māori ward will be underrepresented and the rural will be overrepresented?
So on that matter, good point. You will see the representation sits outside the plus and minus 10% rule, so that you're considering that option, you should bear that in mind. Paragraph 73, page 16, I think, talks to that matter. It comes into play when you make your final proposal, which would then trigger an automatic referral to the Local Government Commission. We talked about this. And in terms of should we go there or not in terms of plus or minus 10% rule, I think there was a general consensus that we sit outside that anyways, and so the level of tolerance from a local government commission might be around that point, but that's not to lose sight of the technicalities around what that decision does mean should you go there, but that's kind of part of the whole discussion. But you're right, it's those options, particularly for Māori boards, are outside the plus or minus 10% rule, and you will be required to, if we get to that point, if that ends up in your final proposal, to very clearly articulate the community of interest, giving credence to the fact that you want to have structure that sits outside the plus or minus 10% rule.
Yeah, so those boundaries are quite set though, where the rural and city end, because you're almost robbing from one to pay for the other.
Yeah, so those structures are articulated in the map, and they're yeah.
And then the other question is more for the rural councillors, just for my own clarification. If the 2 rural elected members, assuming we go with option 2, one's from Makarori and one's from Hexton, will you feel represented if you didn't vote for either of them?
Look, I think it actually wouldn't matter to me if you lived in the city and you stood in the rural ward. The point is that you're wearing that hat and you are then taking on the responsibility to know that you know what the issues are that are distinct from the city related issues. You would by default have to become the expert in resource management. You would become the expert in water. You would become the expert in biodiversity and all the other stuff. You would have people look to you as the person in this organisation who brings those issues to that table if they're not in the report, or if the report's not representing them in a way that is fair, based on what is happening out there. For me, I'm not too worried about Hexton being rolled into there. You might say, well, that's nice because it's bolstering the rural numbers. Sure it is. But the reality is that Hexton, being that it does have a close relationship with the city, they don't have much risk of being underrepresented, and the issues for Hexton don't have really any risk of being missed between, because they operate at the interface between what happens in the city and what happens in the rural area. They're pretty well covered. The people that concern me, and that's why I guess I thought I'd be angry standing here, knowing that it was going to fall this way, knowing that this was the balance that we were going to end up with. I thought I'd be angry, but it's actually just made me really sad. Because you think you know, but you don't know. You think we've got poverty in the city, you ain't got a clue. Honestly, you go up and look around some of those areas up the coast, poverty is miles worse. You don't get phone calls from mothers saying, I can't get my kid to school, and if I go down the road today, the bus is going to go off the road, so maybe we shouldn't run the bus. These are the people who approach you directly and think that you're in their camp, they can rely on you to chase it up on their behalf. If you're prepared to segment everybody in this organisation and apportion them to someone out there, then fine, but I lay down that challenge, because that's what you are when you're a rural councillor. You are literally all they've got, because banging on the door in here, you all know it takes a lot of persistence, and a lot of them give up. We're literally their last port of call. I'd like to say that it's just as hard when you're in town, but it's not, because you can literally walk down here every day of the week till someone listens to you. I wish we didn't need the rural wards. That's all I've got to say.
Okay.
Pat and then Andy.
I rise to speak against option 1 for some of the issues that have been very eloquently raised already, but I can't help but stress again, it almost mirrors what this council put up in 2018, and which, with some submissions both from quite well-informed members of the community and a range of people, the Local Government Commission listened and said at large is not appropriate for this large rural area where we have the issues of representation which have been so aptly described already. So I do urge our city colleagues to think about what that means, and I completely support the mayor. And if there isn't a second already, I'm very happy that Councillor Burdett seconded it. Thank you, Councillor Burdett, to recognise that option 2 is what we should be putting out there for our community. It will help to give people representation. It will give us a new look around the council table, and that's great. But I just think you ought to think beyond your 4 walls and the ready access that everyone has in the city to services, and the very need to be available to people. And that's what's really important, to be available, to go to their meetings, to listen to their issues, to take them up on behalf of the people that live outside our city limits. And with the greatest respect to whomever raised Makarori, they're perfectly happy, I understand, was mentioned by one of our council officers before, being in a rural ward. I mean, so I just think we can go on splitting straws constantly, but I just think option 2 is the best option for our community, and I will be voting against option 1. Thank you.
Okay, any last? Councillor Cranston and then Dowsing. Thank you.
Yeah, well, since the discussion's gone on, I've narrowed it down to option one. One of the things that comes back to me quite often is the ability of the individual to select the council they want. And I acknowledge that it happens in the rural wards, but to actually be in a situation where you are selecting or have the ability to select 1 or 2 councillors as opposed to 8 or 5, I think has swayed my decision a bit. I think people do want the ability to elect or vote for as many around the council table as possible. And by splitting it into 4 or 5 options, you thin that out quite a bit. You get a lot more of the community only selecting 1 councillor or having the ability to select 2, as opposed to as much of the table as they want. So that's kind of given me a bit of direction that would steer me into option 1.
Thanks for that. Councillor Dowsing and then Councillor Wharehinga and then. Cool, we'll get to your right of reply soon. Thank you. Councillor Wharehinga, Councillor Foster, are you putting up your hand for a third go, my friend?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you very much for the discussion today. My council colleagues, this has been yeah, very robust and very informative. And I just did want to speak to how I'd be voting today. I'll be in support of option 2. If option 1 is to fail, I'll be in support of option 2. Councillor Worsnop, you're dead right. Like there's something to be said of people that live in a community. Like, and this is speaking as a person who's rurally connected. I've always said, and I know of myself and my whānau that are out that way and up the coast, they know this of me too. But you're right, I don't live out there. I don't drive up Kopuaroa Road every day. I'm not out up the Mata every day. I'm not even up and down Kanakanaia, you know, every day, even though I'm there on a regular basis. But you're right, there's something to be said of someone that is at least involved and connected to those places, and also having the ability and the power as someone that lives out in those areas to be able to pick the person that represents kind of your specific area. Yes, the rural ward is going to be kind of one gigantic rural ward, but at least there's something to be said of being able to give the ability to those of our population who live out in the rural areas, both on the general ward, both on the general role and the Māori role, to be able to elect those and choose of those who are able to speak to their issues in the same STV way. You know, it could be like the rural communities, even though they're individual and quite distinct communities of interest, the rural communities also know each other as well, and are also able to go, you know what, I really like X and they live at Pōtaka. I really like this person, they live out at Muriwa, etc., etc. So you're bang on in regards to your kōrero. Thank you very much for sharing your voice, but also sharing your kariaroto, your internal wairoa in regards to the decision making around here, because what often happens inside here is that the procedural stuff kind of separates the actual wairoa and heart stuff. So thank you for bringing that to this table. It's definitely spoken to me and mine in regards to this. So yes, if option 1 is to fail, then I'll be voting for option 2. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Okay, let me go to my list. We are starting to wrap up. Last comments. Quick. First, why do I have AC? You have spoken. SD have spoken. JW have spoken. Foster, go for gold, and then Meredith Akuata Brown.
Yeah, I think, you know, as far as option 1 goes, you know, we've got to think about our voters as well. They're not silly. You know, this region has got some intelligent people out there, and they know they want to have some rural representation. This council has always had rural representation, so our voters will take that into consideration when they go to the ballot box. And it'll be reflective of the people that are standing representing those areas. So, you know, please don't take anything away from our intelligent voters in this region. And the other thing is that the STV system suits the option 1. It probably suits it way better than option 2, because you've got you know, 8 councillors in general ward, 5 Māori councillors on an STV system. It would work really well. So yeah, that's my comments before we go to vote. But yeah, please do not underestimate the intelligence of our community.
I guess I just wanted to point out on page 10, point 11, general themes of the responses were, most people want councillors to be elected district-wide. Most people viewed the whole of the Gisborne district as their community of interest. Most people thought that their community's representation was best guaranteed by councillors elected district-wide. So when I read that, I thought, well, that's what we are listening to as well. I mean, again, most people haven't been involved in voting in this region. We've been a part of a number of surveys to qualify that statement. We are saying we want more people to get involved. We want fairer and better. And the intent of all of this is that. So option 1, to me, allays that and it says that. I do hear the concerns and the cries of the hearts of those who've been in the rural sectors for many years. And just so you know, some of us urban, we're very connected to those rural spaces too. And that's through whakapapa, not just living there. I think, as Larry said, let's let our voters make the right choices too. But most people want to see a whole region. Kia ora.
Thank you. Tony and then Phil.
Thank you. Larry basically stole my thunder to a degree. Our voters are smart and this region has benefited from incredible rural representation. Now, Kerry is not going to disappear next election round, nor is Sandra or Bill or Pat. Your communities know the amazing mahi you do, the amazing skills that you have, but they're not exclusive to you. What is exclusive to you is where you live. I have incredible skill sets, as do other people around this table, that aren't limited to just the city stuff. Thanks for speaking. And so, and I care about my region, and it is a region-wide. We're not the whole motu. We are just Te Rāwhiti. It's not the biggest region in the world, and not the biggest region in New Zealand. There's no reason why if I had the opportunity to vote next time around for Kerry, wouldn't vote for Kerry, because I know the skill sets you would bring to this table, as an example. So option 1 with an STV system does enable us to really, I think, get the best for region. Kia ora.
Okay, Bill, and then I'm going to make a short comment and then Shannon, right of reply. Thank you. Microphone.
To the debate, some of the arguments. I'm here as a district-wide council. But at the end of the day, I represent the Northern region. Wharekāhika have a community of interest that they want things within their district. Manukau Aotearoa, the same thing. I go to the Progressive Association meetings. It's all about Te Aroa and what can council do for them. The same thing happens at Tikitik and in Ruatoria and when I go to Taupo. So from trying to tell me that there's no community of interest in how people vote is wrong. What I'm trying to say is we need to be assured, and when I'm listening around the table, it's the city versus the rural again. That's for sure. Trying to dress it up as the Maori wards and 8 general councils. That's not how it's supposed to be. I've said earlier, we need to ensure that the decision we made is in the best interest of the wider district.
Thank you for that. So I'll just make a quick comment, Shannon, and then you can finish up for us before we vote. So one of the advantages of being the mayor is that you go around the region quite a bit. I have the opportunity to engage with lots of people in town, but then I also join Bill up the coast. I go to the west as well, and you get different feedback from different communities. And during this process, lots of feedback that I have received, heaps, align with option 1 that says we want to be able to vote for all councillors. I don't want to live in an area where I only can vote for one person or don't even have the ability to vote. That's one side. And Meredith, I just want to say, even though that says in the paper, most people said that they want to vote for all councillors and that they align with that. We don't always do what most people say in council. We make a decision that's the best for Tairāwhiti. So I just wanted to say great, but we don't always make decisions that people say is what they want. The other side of the coin, the feedback I receive from voices outside of the city is that, and Māori and Pākehā voices, that they really value the fact that there's someone in their ward or their region. And like Kerry said, it is a different skill set or a different understanding. So just on the flip side, I have received a lot of feedback for option 1, but I have also received a lot of feedback for option 2. And today I will be going with option 2 because I sometimes think those voices are not always heard in our council. So I just want to leave it there, both feedback, but I lean towards option 2. Councillor Dowsing, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll start by addressing a few statements that were made and try to keep it lighthearted to begin with, I guess, with Councillor Seymour referring to the hearings where many well-informed locals spoke. And I'm assuming she's referring to herself in that, speaking against our preferred option. But the determination that she stated by the Commission wasn't declined because of our choice. It was declined because of our comms. It was declined because we didn't take that option to consultation. It had nothing to do with what we came to as a solution. It was the process we undertook that failed that determination. So it's not that our rural areas weren't represented in that decision, it's that we didn't communicate it well enough. I actually want to say thank you very much, Kerry. By far the most moving statement I've heard in here for a long time. You're an anomaly in here. You do an unprecedented amount of research. And if this is to go through this way, then I'll be proud to vote for you. But your empathy shows that we're not doing enough at this table to get equitable outcomes. It's not just your job, it's all of our jobs. And we need to make sure that those problems are making it to this table and turning into decision reports, and that we're not letting central government's reform consume all of our time and dictate what we're doing here and not letting us get to our priorities. So keep raising them, and anybody who has issues of that magnitude needs to get them onto the table and into a report. And yeah, I want to see the best representation around this table. It's not about where they're from, it's about the skills they bring, the passion they bring, the abilities they bring. And I believe that our public will vote for the right people. So
Thank you.
Happy to put this.
Okay, councillors, I have on the table option 1 that was moved by Councillor Dowsing. Councillor Seymour has asked for division. It was seconded by Councillor Robinson. Go, Heather.
Councillor Akahata Brown.
Aye.
Councillor Burdett.
No.
Councillor Cranston.
Aye.
Councillor Dowsing.
Aye.
Isaac Hughes. Councillor Gregory. Councillor Faulkner.
No.
Councillor Foster.
Aye.
Councillor Robinson.
Aye.
Councillor Seymour. Councillor Sheldrake.
Aye.
Your Worship.
No.
Councillor Fadihinga.
No.
Councillor Worsnott.
Carried. 2468, 246 carried. Thank you. I do want to thank the staff. They have gone above and beyond. I am Anita, you and your team, Fraser, James, Dean, everyone out there that I'm missing. Heather, the feedback that I have received is that people really feel the fact that stuff was mailed to mailboxes mean our community that might not be on the internet or Facebook had the opportunity to mail back. People felt confident to come in and just have a quick chat in the foyer. There was the survey on the internet, which when I received feedback that other people missed, I could come to James and say, hey, can you add this as a community of interest or add that? And you did it. So I do want to thank everyone that was involved in this, but most of all, I want to thank our community for coming back to us and saying, this is a big change. We're excited about it. We're also a bit scared about it. So let me tell you what's important to me, and hopefully you will take that into account when you make your decision. So thank you, everyone. I declare this meeting closed. And now we are moving our workshop earlier. So we will break for a cup of tea for the next 15 minutes. And then we're going to do our Treaty of Waitangi workshop with Paul Beverly. Oh, it's not 10 o'clock, it's 12. Should we have lunch? Yeah.